So hi again. So what we felt was ours to do was to share our own perspective about this whole idea of expanding consciousness in a changing world. And so each of us are just going to share from our unique perspectives what that means to us. So I think EJ is going to start. Oh, no, Paul. That's right.
That's right. You changed it, remember?
I did. I know. Paul is now going to speak.
Good morning. Good morning. So we don't take on the small tasks, do we? No. Okay, we're just going to talk about a little bitty subject called expanding consciousness, right? Wow. Wow. So you guys can take this, right? So let's take a deep breath in. Are you ready to romp? Because we're going to romp. That's what I do. I do metaphysical romp, okay? So here we go. So I want you to work with me here a little bit, and I want you to think of water. And water, we can talk about water as having three phases, right? So there's ice, there's liquid water, and what? Steam. And so we got to work with me. Instead of thinking of the steam coming out of the pot, think of steam that becomes the water vapor, okay? And so we have water and ice that are very physical. We have water vapor, which is invisible, and we really can't taste or smell or anything about it. And then underlying all three, we have H2O, right? So this H2O is the constant that underlies those three phases of water. And there are natural laws that govern that water, right? Okay, so I want you to think about that now. We're going to put this and use this as a metaphor for what we experience in our world, okay? So we have the physical world, which is equivalent to the water and the ice, right? And we have consciousness, which is equivalent to the water vapor. Consciousness, you can't taste, you can't feel, or anything like that. And then the absolute phase, or that which underlies everything, including consciousness, are things that don't change, like the H2O. That doesn't change, right? The molecule doesn't change. The laws that govern doesn't change. The same thing is true of consciousness in the physical world in general. There are laws that don't change, and there are principles or divine ideas that don't change. So we could think of the absolute realm of these laws and principles and consciousness and physicality of being three phases of the same thing, just like we have H2O, water vapor, and ice and water. Are you with me? Yes. Okay, so she gave us the project of looking, right? Well, we agreed, right? Yeah. So she didn't say, you're doing this. It's not her style. She would be more like, you're doing this. Right? Yeah. Right? Yes. So there's that. So we have volunteers, and sometimes you're voluntold. So, and I love this subject anyway, so it's great. So when we talk about consciousness, it's a big old subject, right? And what in the world is consciousness? Before we can talk about expanding it, so what is consciousness? Where is consciousness? Well, we can't locate consciousness, can we? We can't put our finger on it. It's non-local. It's everywhere, totally present. And then science finally has decided to tackle it. And so science is now telling us that consciousness is both awareness, which is what the Fillmores were saying, and this other component, which is really interesting. It's called arousal. Consciousness is awareness plus arousal, because we can be aware of things, but in order to do anything, we have to have arousal to take action. So we're going to be looking at, not only in this service, but all next week, this thing called consciousness, which is awareness and arousal. And the lens through which I'm going to be looking through it is Unity's metaphysics, Unity's principles and laws and teachings. Because what unity is all about is raising consciousness. So we're not talking about expanding the amount of consciousness there is. There already is all the consciousness there's ever going to be. Okay, so when I'm talking about expanding consciousness, what we're really talking about is expanding my personal awareness of it, my personal use of it, and raising it, raising the quality of it. Does anybody here want to raise the quality of your consciousness? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's what we're all here for. So if we're going to be raising our consciousness, did you ever think about, so what are we raising? You know, and part of the problem I find in a lot of unity situations, we talk about these subjects in such general terms that we don't have a way to get a grasp on it to actually do it. So in a sense, we stay too vague. I'm going to raise consciousness. Well, how are we going to do that? And when we stay vague, we know what happens in vagueness. What happens in vagueness stays in vagueness, right? Doesn't go anywhere. Okay? So my passion is getting down to that nitty-gritty level. So what is it we're raising? Well, and as a metaphysician, what we're raising is the overall quality of our thoughts, our ideas, our beliefs, our images. Tibby's thoughts, ideas, beliefs, images, and their associated feelings, emotions, experience, and perceptions. Because if the quality of those things are down here, you get a what? Low consciousness. However, when we become aware of those thoughts, ideas, beliefs, and images, and their related feelings and emotions and experiences, when we can become aware of what they currently are, we can make them better. Did you know that? You can make them better, but you can't make them better if you're not using your consciousness to be aware of their current quality, and if you're not using the arousal portion of consciousness, you're not going to make a change. So in a metaphysics class, we're talking about changing the overall quality, raising that quality, making them better, making our thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, images better. But better based on what? Based on what we believe the divine to be. Because we know that in truth we have this potential within us that is the divine. We have a divine identity. And so that's what we're working towards. We're expanding our awareness, we're expanding and raising our consciousness, thought by thought, image by image, belief by belief, to a level that aligns with what we believe our divinity is all about. So do you want to do that? Yeah, so do I. So do I. So come to class or listen to EJ.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
For leading right into what I was going to say.
I hoped I did that.
Of course you did. You know, from the time that we first, as human beings, walked out of our tribal existence, there has been within us something that you can call a yearning, a longing. I call it a divine discontent, or I also call it an evolutionary impulse, because that same thing that Paul talked about that's within us has been in us in an evolutionary manner from the time that we first knew that we knew. Because, you know, this consciousness he's talking about, at some tiny, it's in the smallest particle. And it expanded as we continued to evolve until the day came that we suddenly knew that we knew. And if you want to go back to the Bible, we suddenly knew. And so you had the story of Eve who looks up and says, "Did God really say that?" Okay. So we can see in the Bible, because I do use the Bible a lot, we can see in the Bible a story of how we do engage ourselves in the kind of practice and belief system and letting go that Paul is talking about. And so my passion for a long time has been evolution of consciousness. Now, when I was teaching at the Village Post all the time, full time, I was the Bible teacher. And I said, the Bible is a tool for what my primary passion is. My primary passion is the evolution of consciousness. So when I discovered the spiral that Sheryl mentioned earlier, I discovered that there's a tool that we can use to help us in the things that Paul was talking about. And we use the metaphor of a journey. So the first time we look at the Bible, we find an Abraham, possibly the first real person in the Bible, who went out on a journey. And so we can see the journey as this metaphor. And as we see the journey, we now, the further we go, the easier it is for us to look back to see where we've been. And it's very important, if we're going on a journey, to get to places where we can look back and see where we've been, because it's then that we can understand that we're going somewhere, that there is something we're going toward. And the problem is that sometimes we think that's some pie-in-the-sky, wonderful place we're all going to be. But you know what it is? It's an never-ending journey. It's a never-ending journey, because the more we come along and the more we're able to look back in our history to see where we've been and recognizing that it's all within us as well, we realize there are things we can look at. So there are stages on our journey. And our stages can help us understand what it is we need to let go of and what we need to bring with us. So the soul's journey is about understanding some of those stages so we can get some real practical ideas of, oh, this is something I need in my religious belief and my spiritual journey that I need to let go of, and here's some things I need to bring along. And how does it relate to my Bible class? Very interesting that when we look at the people who wrote the biographies of Jesus, and put into the mouth of Jesus these things, they talked about the kingdom of heaven or the kingdom of God. And we need to understand where they were coming from. They came from a place where they had been living under despotic, violent emperors and rulers, and in their heart, this longing that I talked about, this longing was, I want to live in a place where I can have something that rules my life that is kind and loving, and etc. So they said the kingdom of heaven. And you know how Jesus described it? He said the kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. A mustard seed is a tiny seed that expands and grows. He said the kingdom of heaven is like a fish net, that you start out with and then it fills. The kingdom of heaven is like the yeast in the bread, because it causes this tiny little piece of yeast to grow and expand. So when we talk about expanding consciousness, what we're really talking about is a way for help us understand how we in our individual journeys can identify the things that we need to let go in order to make room for that expansion of consciousness that we're talking about. So I invite you to join me in either one of these classes or both.
Well, I'm excited to just share with you a passion of mine, the 12 Powers. And if you recall, we've had a 12-hour service twice here since I've been here. It was part of the culture of my home church that we would have a ritual every year where we would discern a power that would work us throughout the year. And so I am so excited that I get to teach the 12 Powers. Actually, I really wasn't excited about that, because I never thought that I could do it all in 5 days. And I told Paul, I said, I cannot teach this class in 5 days. Well, I've shifted. I'm going to teach it in 5 days. And I'm excited about it because I want to bring an experience of the powers and to talk about just what they really are. Because I know that you've picked up on a theme in my Sunday messages. I am very passionate. I feel like I'm here on this planet to support myself and everyone to know the truth of what you are, to know the beauty, the wholeness, the life, the love, the strength, the wisdom, the magnificence that you are. Because, see, I just have a little, as we evolve, as we continue to transcend what no longer serves us and include what does, as we move up the spiral, and we continue to claim more and more and more and more the truth of what we truly are, those facets of the divine gem that we are, called the 12 Powers, I just know that we are going to be able to move in our world in a way that is in integrity with that divinity more fully, that the outer world, regardless of what circumstances are showing up out there, I shall not be moved. What would that be like? Yeah, that whatever we see on Facebook or whatever we see on the news, that we can more readily stand in our knowing. And so my passion about the 12 powers is that we are going to be able to explore the innate, inherent abilities, attributes, faculties, powers that we already are. We already are. And what is ours to do is to recognize them, know them, claim them, and express them in the world. And so I'm so excited about the opportunity to kind of dive into this whole exploration of our 12 powers, because I don't know about you, when I think about my divinity, and I think about these facets of this divine gem that I am, sometimes I don't really own it. Sometimes I'm like, no, I don't know about that. And so we're going to be able to look at that, and we're going to be able to just dive into that and be able to look at what holds us back from fully expressing the love, the faith, the wisdom, the strength, the power that we are. Because the one thing is that, again, you already have all the faith you need, all the power you need, all the strength you need, all the wisdom. You do. And so what is ours to do is to release that which no longer serves us so that we can claim and affirm all that we are and express it in our lives and to express it in the world, because the world is calling. The world's calling us. So I'm excited to share these beautiful lights that have meant so much to me. I feel very honored to share, to bring them here, and for you to have a taste of just what I've been able to experience over the years, being in their presence and in their wisdom. So I just look forward, if it's yours to do, to come to SEE. That would just be wonderful. We'd love to have you. And just thank you for your openness to hear us this morning. And so let's affirm the truth together. We are expanding consciousness and our ever-changing world through a commitment to evolve, serve, and grow. We make a difference. And so it is. So it is.